Another excerpt from The Ghostwriter by Philip Roth. The young Nathan Zuckerman, an aspiring writer, has gotten the chance to visit his literary hero, E.I. Lonoff, in Lonoff's house. And the two writers are discussing Felix Abravanel, another writer that Nathan somewhat looks up to, but is trying to decide whether he wants to grow up to be more like Abravanel or more like Lonoff. Let's hear what Lonoff has to say about Abravanel. Nathan says, "You don't like him much, Abravanel." Lonoff responds, "I'm not in the business. Liking people is often just another racket. But you're right to think well of his books. Not up my alley, maybe. All that vanity face to face. But when he writes, he's not just a little honim tapping out his superiority with his hooves. He's more like a Dr. Johnson eating opium. The disease of his life makes Abravanel fly. I admire the man, actually. I admire what he puts his nervous system through. I admire his passion for the front row seat. Beautiful wives, beautiful mistresses, alimony the size of the national debt, polar expeditions, war front reportage, famous friends, famous enemies, breakdowns, public lectures, 500-page novels every third year, and still, as you said before, time and energy left over for all that self-absorption. The gigantic types in the books have to be that big to give him something to think about to rival himself. Like him? No. But impressed? Oh, yes. Absolutely. It's no picnic up there in the egosphere. I don't know when the man sleeps, or if he has ever slept, aside from those few minutes when he had that drink with me. Why is that important? Well, in society, we usually admire our celebrities, right? We follow their lives, we look up to them. Young people look out to celebrities and say, I want to be like that person. In this case, what Nathan Zuckerman has going is, I want to be a famous writer. He's got two models for himself. He's got Abravanel, who is the more famous, societally connected, famous friends, involved writer. And the writer that he's visiting is this different sort of writer, the Recluse. So what Lonoff is saying in this passage, criticizing his counterpart, or what Philip Roth is saying through Lonoff, is that actually the famous Abravanel may not be so worthy of admiration. Look at the way that Lonoff separates it. He says, admire his books. Where does it say? You're right to think well of his books, but when he writes, he's not just tapping out his superiority. More like a Dr. Johnson eating opium. I admire the man. I admire what he puts his nervous system through. Like him? No. But impressed? Absolutely. So Lonoff is saying that Abravanel is not somebody he wants to hang out with, not a good guy necessarily, but he is kind of operating at the height of his human capacities, right? Lonoff says, I admire what he puts his nervous system through. I mean, Abravanel is living a life that is just at the maximum amount of stress that a human being can probably do. It doesn't even sound like he's doing that successfully. It mentions famous enemies and breakdowns and still time and energy left over for all that self-absorption. So why does this passage matter? The reason it matters is it's trying to tell us that being a famous writer or being the person that's admired doesn't really necessarily mean that you're actually admirable. Lonoff makes a critique of Abravanel's character here and says that he's really made himself the center of attention, not because he wants to do any kind of artistic service to society, but because he's just self-absorbed. So we should read this as a criticism of the idea that celebrities are necessarily people that we should look up to. Now, to be more specific than celebrities, I think it's also picking apart the book in general is picking apart this romanticization that many people who study literature, and certainly many aspiring writers like Nathan, this romanticization of the person that the writer is, right? They're a virtuous artist, striving to find truth. And when we read other sections in this book, we can see how Philip Roth will also pick apart that idea of the writer and the artist as being someone that plays a virtuous role in society.